Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm still puttering away. We're getting a whole bunch of stuff taken care of. Finally in the background, stuff's starting to happen. I'm getting really stoked about some of the projects coming on. Today, actually, I had the opportunity. My dear friends Cheyenne and Ivan over at Species Canada, they just finished moving their entire facility. They went from one warehouse all the way across town. They're outside of town still, and I got a chance to go and see their new facility, and it looks awesome. They're going to do some amazing, amazing things there. Their selection of their animals that these guys work with and breed is absolutely world class. But one thing I did come home with is I didn't come home with one, I didn't come home with two, but I came home with 3 new isopods. So let's take a peek. Let's get them set up. 3 isopods! You didn't know today was Isopod Day. Today's Isopod Day. Let's get to it. Well, so we're starting to get ready. Over here, I still have 2 large bins. I remember I probably told you guys, or if I didn't, I'm sorry, but I lost my colony of Magnificus. And they were one of the big Spanish isopods. They're kind of a seasonal thing that they only breed once a year for me. But I ended up with 2 empty bins down there. We're going to use 2 of those today. And then on this side, we still have behind the scenes, there's 9. There's another 9 bins behind there, and I'm pretty sure I still have 2 or 3 of those bins open. We're going to be using one of those today for one of the species that we've got. Before we do that, though, we got to go ahead and get our soil mix. Now, I went out into the garage. I ran out of using soil mix because we've been doing all these resets and all the tarantulas and stuff. And I ran out to the garage to get all my components. I've got all my my white wrought wood that I love using and stuff, you know, natural. I've got my charcoal. I've got a lot of, like this is all Zoom Ed Reptibark and stuff. But what I was missing is I was missing my bags of like worm castings and my organic soils and stuff. I went and picked up another big bag while I was away. I got another big bag of sphagnum moss, long fiber sphagnum moss. Now we use that as also for a moisture retentive, but I also like to add a fair bit of that. So I'm going to use probably about half of this brick, mix it all into this components. Now the one thing I don't really care for, it doesn't offer anything to the animals, it just offers a bit of drainages. This soil mix, I hadn't used this soil mix for a while just because I didn't really need it, but it has some perlite in it. Now perlite offers absolutely nothing to the isopods, but it also won't hurt them in any way. I just don't like the fact that it looks like these little white rocks all throughout my mix. But it's short of today, we're in the middle of winter here. It would have to be a drive into town. It'd take me about an hour each way to go back all the way to town to be able to pick up the right stuff. This will work totally fine for my purposes to get these guys set up. And then we still also have a bunch of natural green moss. Lots of still moss, still harvested. We got lots of lichens and different things like that. So let's get these guys set up. I'm purposely not showing you which ones they are, but there's my 3 cultures out there, 1, 2, 3. But you guys don't get to see those till later on. Let's get to it. So which isopods do you think I got? You know, we've got all sorts of cool isopods. We got the Marilynella. We got all sorts of cool stuff. And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be super rare for bigs to like it or something a little bit different. There might be, maybe if it's an old school classic, I don't know. Maybe you should stop here. Go in the comments. Let me know which species you guys think I got. You got 3 choices. 3. All you have to do is guess one of them. Let's see what you can give. See if you can guess them. Let's get back to it. Now you can see I've mixed it all in really well. The only components that are missing out of right now is adding in the calcium source to stabilize it. And I have that with me as well. Nice, loose, loamy. Now, normally I would mix it in a small batch. I'd be mixing in my calcium carbonate into this here as well. But for my purposes, I'm going to mix it into individual tubs because I do use this for a lot of other things that we're doing right now. So if I do have leftover of this mix going into doing some of the other resets, I don't necessarily need the calcium in those sorts. And as you guys have seen, I'm pretty generous when it comes to the calcium. The calcium obviously is very important to a crustacean, but it's also very important to stabilizing the environment. So that when you're dealing with a lot of products that are acidic, that this will help stabilize the environment. You can see that there's not really any black earth to this mix. It's mostly like a peat moss type product, which will have a neutral to slightly acidic pH. And then once you add in animals and they start producing byproduct, waste products such as frass, well then those products also then add a lot more acidity to the level. So having a fair good source, not only is the calcium, as I mentioned, important to the animals, but it's important to the soil substrate, the stratum as well of the substrate. I'm going to use a little bit more. I'm going to want to add some kettle bones. Now we're going to go get, I'm going to go get the bark pieces and the moss. We're going to kind of evenly dampen this down a little bit because it's mostly dry right now. We'll get the green moss and then we'll start looking at getting the animals into it. Well, all three of the enclosures are ready to go. I had two of the larger ones. They're set for two of the very distinct species. And then the other one that's going to go in the third one is going to go in the smaller one. Now I am using lots of green moss, natural green moss. I have lots of pieces with natural lichens and so forth on it. Very, very cool. You know, these all become either dietary sources, structures, hiding places, whatever. I've got lots of nice pieces of naturally harvested oak bark, harvested off of trees that had passed away. You know, lots of it has different mosses and lichens and stuff, so forth growing on it. Now, one species is very, very similar in regards to, it's a porcilio, so it's very, very similar to Hoffman sagi. So it needs kind of middle of the road. It doesn't need super dry like, say, Porcilio hassii, but it likes a fair bit of, it likes moisture, but it doesn't like it wet like, say, a Miralunella or a Cubaris. One of the other ones is a Cubaris, and it is going to require a much more damp environment, so more than likely it's going to be one of these two. And then the third one that's going to be in this one is an Armadillidium species. And it's an Armadillidium species that may not be super exciting to some, but it's just a species I've never worked with, and it's a species I think is a little bit rather unique. We've already added the cuttlebone, we've already added the calcium to stabilize the substrate. I've gone and misted everything down using reverse osmosis water. You could also use rainwater or melted snow. Now I'm going to let them sit for a couple of hours. The reason for that is everything, almost all my components were outside in the garage and we're below freezing right now. So, and I have heated floors. So the reason they're all on the floor like this is that it'll all come to temperature very, very quickly. The one thing I always do when I get ready to go and set up a new culture is that I always inoculate them with some springtails. So get these cultures nice and get them off to a good start. As you guys know, and I've preached about it many, many times in videos in the past, generally when I'm setting up, bringing home a new species, I generally have a culture or a bin ready to go. And this time here, I just simply did not, and it was going against my own kind of cardinal rule, but we were quick and easy to set the stuff up as long as we had all the components that we needed. And honestly, for an isopod, if it ended up having to sit for an extra day in that little tub, I didn't ship them from across the country or from another area of the world. I literally just picked them up yesterday, so they'd be fine overnight in those tubs. So now we're just going to let them sit. We're just going to make sure that everything's at the right temperature before we go and inoculate and add the animals. It always seems every time I go and do this, there's always one component that I always forget about, and I'm glad I caught it because it was sitting right beside the camera on the by the door. And that is the introduction of the leaf litter, which is such a critical component to these animals. So I always go and add a generous amount of leaf litter. I add it above and below. Provides a lot of structure for the animals, as well as a dietary component. Normally, I usually also go and add in leaf litter into the soil mix, but I didn't do that today. Got lots here, so it's no problem. That one's good to go. Now, I also like to ensure that when I am placing my bark slabs is that my bark slabs go from generally the drier area to the moist area. And it was Wally Kern over at Supreme Gecko that really strongly suggested that, is it acts like a bridge between the different environments so the animals can find the whatever gradient of humidity that they want, that works best for them. And now we're ready to go. Well, the first new isopod, and this is the first new isopod we've added to the collection in a fairly long while. This is a beautiful little Armadillidium species. May not be as flashy as, say, your maculatum or something like that, but this is Armadillidium castellodacea, and it's often referred to as the species Badium, and it's called the Sicily version of castellodacea. They're they're not flashy, but they definitely are unique. Let's see if I can get some out that we can see them a little bit better. They have these beautiful kind of gold bands. They're rather attractive. And because they're an Armadillidium species, they're fairly easy to care for. So I think it's easy. We'll get these guys. See if we can get them out of here a little bit. I don't need to waste the moss. Let me zoom in a little bit and we can see these guys. Another absolutely wonderful isopod from the folks over at Species Canada. Should be fairly prolific, and it should be a fairly straightforward, easy species. Most Armadillidium species are primarily vegetative diet, herbivorous. That word was such a challenge, but so they're generally fairly easy to care for. Let's take a closer look. You can see them already exploring that new environment. The beautiful live moss. They may not be as flashy as, say, the Marylunella tricolors, but I think they definitely are a fascinating species. Very excited to have them in the collection. Armadillidium, Badium, the Sicily form of Castellacea. Now this next bin, this one is the one that requires a lot more humidity. So this one's going to be for that brand new Cubaris species. Now for a Cubaris species, this is not, this is still a very, very popular species. It's far more diminutive in size than, say, the rubber duckies, which will always be popular. Can't see any of them there. One, they are fairly small, but these are just a fascinating species nonetheless, and they're a fairly prolific species. You guys should probably already know what it is. They are the wonderful panda kings. We're going to put them over here on the more the moist side. Let's see if we can get in there and take a closer look. Panda kings, like their cousins, the Cubaris, the rubber duckies, they are also a cave-dwelling species from Asia. And they require fairly high moisture content. They also require slightly higher protein levels. And they definitely require much higher calcium levels. This species is known to be extremely prolific. So I think they're a wonderful addition. Panda kings. And the third species of isopod, as mentioned, this is a large Spanish species, very similar to, say, Porcilio hoffmannsegii, but it also has reminiscence of Porcilio expansus, the highly coveted Porcilio succinctus. Look at that patterning. What an incredible isopod. There's a nice boy right there, nice girl right there. Let's get these guys in. Porcilios tend to prefer a little bit drier, but these ones are as easygoing as doing. There's a nice one right there. Their care, I'm told, should be about as straightforward as doing hoffmannsegii. They may not be as prolific as the hoffmannsegii, but for care, they're pretty much identical. Let's take a closer look. Perhaps not the most active isopod. Well, if you guys enjoyed that, 3 new isopod species in the layer of the Mataquarist. Very exciting day. I think they're all absolutely fascinating species. If you guys guessed right, let me know which one you guys think is your favorite. I'm not telling you which one's my favorite. I like them all. Till next time, my friends, take care.